Devlin, Untamed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Platform.
Welcome to the podcast, people. Martin Devlin, Lachlan War, iOS It's Only Sport. That's the name of our daily radio show, the only independent daily sports show in New Zealand, aired on the Platform. You've got to download the Platform app, subscribe to Platform Plus, do all of that, and you can get to listen to us live or whenever you choose to. If you can't do that, we welcome you on board right now, a 45-minute or so highlight package of what we did today. Issues to discuss. Jahrome Hughes, 1 week for touching the ref. Is that a bit silly? Come on, the ref was in the bloody way, mate. Nottingham Forest docked 4 points by the Premier League. All eyes now on Manchester City. Why do the Premier League deal so publicly with Everton, Nottingham Forest, but such a lack of transparency around Manchester City? An AFL franchise side 4 years away from launching in Tasmania already has 60,000 signed up members at $10 a pop. The so-called Auckland FC supporters group pitch invader saga still has many more questions than answers provided. This gets murkier and murkier, this one. Owen Franks, 2 weeks for his shoulder charge at the end of the Crusaders versus Hurricanes match. The White Ferns were playing again today in Dunedin. 33 condoms per athlete to be handed out by the International Olympic Committee for the Paris Olympics. 33. So you do the math. And is married at first sight, in fact, sport for people who don't actually watch sport? So many issues to discuss, so much sport. We begin the show the same way every day. Tablets in hand, I say gather my flock. It is time for a sermon. This whole Auckland FC and the pitch invader at the next game, it's murky. Let's go to the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
The Eden Park pitch invader, Phoenix versus Melbourne City, Saturday afternoon, and a young man arrested for running onto the field with about 15 minutes to go wearing an Auckland FC shirt. Auckland FC had just launched that shirt days before at a flash bash down the waterfront in Auckland. Mainstream media here then immediately started running stories about how this was a PR stunt by the official AFC supporters group, and that an Auckland FC owner had supplied them with that shirt to wear. So, how did they come to this conclusion? Because the supporters group told them. That's how. Now, this group is at this stage nothing but a Twitter handle. An account proclaiming to represent the club called Terrazza d'Azzurro, an Italian handle that is obviously referencing the Inter Milan style colours and look of the new Auckland FC team jersey. So is Auckland FC now endorsing an Italian-styled and named official supporters group? Why would that be? What on earth is the connection to Auckland and Auckland football fans or potential football fans with an Italian-named supporters group? Yellow fever is the Phoenix equivalent. That sounds something Kiwi, something all-encompassing. And I keep going back to that same question. Why would a brand new football franchise, desperate to try and get as many fans across the Auckland catchment area as possible, choose an anonymous Twitter site with an Italian name as its official supporters base? And if that is, why haven't they formally then acknowledged it? Why hasn't it been part of the very flash PR agency media announcements around the team? And if it is the official supporters group, why don't those people have a public face and a public name? See, this is where mainstream media sports so-called journalists really let themselves down. These are all basic journalistic questions that I'm asking here. Basic curiosity questions that simply must be asked before you run very mischievous stories like this. And it is a mischievous story because what they're implying could be a million miles from the truth here until it is officially endorsed and until these people behind this Terrazza d'Azzurro out themselves and become public. Me, I'm really doubtful about the degree of truth around every aspect of this. The anonymity of the Twitter site is particularly suspicious. Post publicly who you really are. And Auckland FC, please inform everyone that this is your official supporters group, if that's the case. Also, who would endorse in any way the actions of a person invading the pitch. As a publicity stunt, it is really the most dumb thing you could possibly do. Everyone in the country hates pitch invaders. The Warriors are about to go to Christchurch this Friday night against the Raiders. Remember what happened last year in Hawke's Bay when the Brisbane Broncos played? The disruptions to the game. Get these goons and clowns off the field. It would just be something really stupid of Auckland FC to have organised, to have done, to have endorsed, and something that only backfires. To me, it's really about as effective as the Hurricanes Poa haka protests. You hear that sound there? You hear that sound? That's what's left after the pitch invasion and those protests. Yeah. What? You made a clickbait story? And now what? Listen to that. Hear that? Nothing.
Devlin.
What do you want?
We want information. Information.
You won't get it.
The platform.
Headlines. Sports headlines. And don't start with the Chris Luxon thing because that's not a sports story.
Oh, okay, I'm going to start with it now.
Start with it then. I knew you would.
So this is a sensational article on News Hub because Chris Luxon, being the Prime Minister, is obviously the most expert of knowledge when it comes to sport in this country.
He's a Crusaders spokesperson, always has been.
He's been a big fan of the Crusaders since he was a kid.
Yes.
That's what he said last year.
Yeah, you notice that he changed the Air New Zealand logo to actually make it look more like they said, what on earth are News Hub up to? They're so desperate, aren't they? They're so desperate to be relevant.
This is the headline. Watch. Luxon defends Crusaders' horror start to the Super Rugby Pacific season.
No, he's got a right to have an opinion like everyone else, but who cares?
Don't turn it into a story and put it third on your website. It's the third most important sports story right now in New Zealand, according to News Hub. Is what the Prime Minister...
That's why they're going out of business.
Is him defending his rugby team. Just stop it. Please stop it. All right, Waifens are playing today. It is underway in the first of 5 T20s against England. Down at University Oval in Dunedin. 23 without loss are England through 4 overs. Nothing to savour so far for New Zealand. Nothing.
And zero crowd, and I'm afraid to say. Sorry. It is
Are you watching it?
That's the reality. There's no one there. Yeah. I mean, look, they had a big St. Patrick's Day down in Dunedin, and now they're all back. All the students are back at uni, so...
Well, I'm sorry.
I mean, we're still playing bloody cricket. It's in March. It feels weird, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's rugby season. Once rugby and league kick off, just stop with the cricket. Just stop it.
Anyway. Good luck, White Ferns. Go hard. All of that.
The Sansa Foul Play Review Committee has found Crusaders prop Owen Franks guilty of dangerous play in a ruck or maul. He's been suspended for 2 weeks. Fair, probably, because he led with his shoulder into clearing out someone in the ruck, which is probably quite fair. The All Whites will be without their all-time leading goal scorer in the form of Chris Wood. This is for their upcoming internationals in Cairo, after Wood was ruled out with an injury. Alex Rufer, the Wellington Phoenix captain, has been called up. Warriors news, 5'8" Luke Metcalf has agreed a new deal with the club following a breakout 2023 season under Andrew Webster. 2 more years he's on the books for, is Luke Metcalf. Great news for the Warriors. I tell you what, Martin, it's a rather quiet day.
Yeah, it's a Tuesday or Wednesday. What I used to call them injury days, mate.
Injury days.
Injury days?
I'm scouring through. Oh, hold up. Here's a big story. We're going to talk about this a little later on in the show. Actually, I just thought of 2 more stories. Never mind, it's not that quiet. Nottingham Forest have been docked 4 points for breaching Premier League profit and sustainability rules. An independent commission found Forest's losses to 2022-23 breached the threshold of £61 million by £34.5 million. The immediate loss of points means they drop below Luton in the Premier League's relegation zone. So, as it stands, Nottingham Forest, well, they're going to get relegated. That ain't great. Back to some NRL-related news. Melbourne Storm half Jahrome Hughes has copped the 1-week suspension for shoving referee Chris Butler during the Storm's 30-26 victory over the Warriors. If you watch the footage, I think it's pretty damn hard done by. I don't think it should be a suspension at all, but that's just my opinion.
Devlin.
That is a disgusting act.
The platform.
Jahrome Hughes, 1 week for removing the referee out of the way so we could make that tackle on Rocco Berry. I know you're not allowed to touch the referees. Referees are sacrosanct and at every single level, but should some more common sense have applied with this? Tony Kemp, who guests as part of the Rugby League Hour every Monday between 3 and 4, and that hour then available in podcast form as well. Where you find this particular podcast, if you haven't listened, I urge you to have a listen. Tony, all over this issue. Look, he does push referee Chris Butler. He moves him out of the way. But if he didn't move him out of the way, well, then Rocco Berry just runs straight through that gap and scores a try. I don't know what he's meant to do.
Yeah, the context of it, Marty, is that the scores are locked at 18-all. And you've got Jahrome Hughes, who's an international player, putting his team and his body on the line to stop the score, which would have just let Rocco Berry step inside the referee and put the game out of reach, I guess, for the Warriors against Melbourne in the context of how that game pans out. So I don't know what Jahrome had to do. He hasn't gone in. If you go back to 1989, John Schuster steps down the right-hand side of the pitch at the Sydney Football Stadium against South Sydney in a game I played in, and steps inside the fullback, and Wayne Chisholm comes over the back of the referees in the middle of them and knocks the referee out, actually tackles the referee, and tries to use that as an excuse to stop Johnny Schuster from scoring, which he never was going to get to. And I think that's intent. I think Chisholm ended up getting about 12 weeks for that instance. That's when this ruling first came in. But to say to Jahrome Hughes, look, mate, you're meant to just stay there and the referee's in your way. Like Gerard Butler, he needs to move his butt and get back on side of the attacker, so he's looking at the defenders as opposed to running directly inside a defender in the defensive line. And I don't see what else Jahrome Hughes could do. He had to push the referee out of the way to make the try-saving tackle at 18-all. It was nonsensical that they've suspended the guy for a week.
This is the first player to be banned for contact with the ref since 2016. And I suppose what the NRL are trying to do is perhaps send a message not to the professional players, but maybe everyone else who plays rugby league, and especially in the junior grades where refs tend to cop it, and just to say, hey, listen, the rule is you can't touch a referee at any time, and that's the blanket rule, and there are no circumstances which allow for that whatsoever. Having said that, there's just been a raft of players come out, Mick Ennis and Corey Parker, Andrew Johns, Brad Fittler, amongst others. Yourself have just all agreed on the same thing. What the hell was he meant to do under those circumstances?
Well, in naming those people, they're all ex-players that have been in a game where you've got your game on the line at 18-all, and every single one of us that have made that comment would have done the same thing. We would have pushed the referee out of the way so we could have made the tackle and stopped the scores getting away from us. And although I agree with, yes, we need to make a stand and advocate that you don't touch referees, I think common sense needs to prevail here, where the NRL sometimes doesn't show that, and they make a decision based on a ruling that actually has no logic around why they get to that decision. The fact is, the referee was standing in the defensive line. He needs his butt kicked because he needs to be back on the other side of the line on an offensive line, looking at the defence in that situation. He's the one who's got caught out here, not Jahrome Hughes. But Jahrome Hughes had no other action to do but to push him out of the way to make the tackle. Otherwise, Rocco Berry steps inside the referee and he scores a try. So, you get the decision that's made from Jahrome Hughes. Unfortunate for Melbourne because they've got no Munster as well. So a new halves pairing for them going in with 2 wins at the moment. Craig Bellamy will be absolutely spitting chips on that decision. But I don't see what else Jahrome Hughes can do, Marty, to be honest. If he gets put in that situation 9 times out of 10, he's going to come up with the same result.
Finally then, just in terms of the rules, if he hadn't have touched the referee and the referee's obstructing him and Berry had scored that try, surely they would have had to take it. I mean, I don't know what it's a bounce ball in football. I don't know what you do in rugby league. I mean, just basically start from the tackle count from where Berry caught the pass. Or so. What is the rule there? Because the ref would have to actually say at the end of that, no, I got in the guy's way. We have to go back, don't we?
Well, you do, and we saw that on the weekend against Canterbury. So the referee, on the way, they've called it back and said, no, I got in the way of the guy making the tackle, and we've got to have to go back and replay that play again. So go back out 10 metres and we'll start again.
Yeah, right.
The problem with that, Marty, is that it's all subjective. So you don't know every referee. And we heard Richie Hagar say this yesterday on the podcast. Every referee's interpretation of the game is different. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking just about the referees in the middle, but we're talking about sideline referees, guys up there in the bunker, and they come and make decisions. Sometimes you're wondering where the hell they get them from. And yes, they could have gone through, Rocco could have scored the try, but you could have easily had the bunker say, well, no, he might never have got there, or he was out of position, or whatever. You know, at the end of the day, I think logic should have prevailed here. And Graham Annesley should have said, well, actually, Gerard, you're in the wrong position. And he had no other alternative but to push you out of the way to make the tackle. Now, we don't agree that he puts his hands on you, but let's talk to him, make sure that he understands that. But you, as well, as a referee, need to get out of the way.
The Tight Five.
5 separate sporting topics, roughly a minute or so on each. When the bell rings, reminds us to move on to the next one. Jahrome Hughes, we'll go back with that. 1 week for pushing the ref. Has he been hard done by there, Lachlan? Owen Franks, 2 weeks suspension. Is that fair for what was a pretty idiotic play from him at the end of the Hurricanes-Crusaders game? Speaking of the Crusaders, do you have any empathy? That stat that Jeff brought us about the fact that Tom Christie's the only player to have run on in last year's final against the Chiefs, does that account for their poor season form? It's certainly, doesn't it? I mean, you can't, yeah. The Tasmanian Devils are an AFL side that is 4 years away from playing. They have already attracted 60,000 foundation fans, paying $10 a pop. You do the math. And why aren't Auckland FC doing the same kind of thing? Speaking of Auckland FC, what really is the relationship with this so-called supporters group, Terraza d'Azzurro? Translated, that is the Blue Terrace in Italian. That's what it means, the Blue Terrace. Chris Wood, out of the All Whites for a couple of friendly matches. I don't even know whether you knew they were on. And the White Ferns will give you an update on that score as well in the next few minutes if you are interested. Just quickly on Jahrome Hughes again. We spoke about this about half an hour ago, mate, but, I think common sense is what should be prevailing here. And every set of rules, Lachlan, can be rewritten under any set of circumstances because individual things happen during games, during sports, that you can't plan for. And when the ref is in the way, there's a couple of ways of dealing with this. You simply stop the play and say, okay, well, if it's a drop ball in football, you start from, the tackle count wherever it was. So Jahrome Hughes probably had an option up his sleeve, but I'll cut him some slack in that. In the heat of the moment, are you thinking about that? Is that what's going through your head? Or when you're battling out there on the field and you've got a guy running towards you, you're just trying to prevent the try, aren't you?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's wrong here. That's what the thing is.
No, I don't think so either. I think what should be, like, in my very limited time playing sport, whether it was at school or club or socially since I've given up on my hopeful athletic career, if I found myself in that situation, my natural instinct would be to push the ref out of the way.
Or to put your hands on him and move him somehow, right? I mean, it would be, wouldn't it? I mean,
if I didn't, and then I had to try and snake around him, and that puts me at a disadvantage, I'd say, ref, come on. You're the reason I couldn't make that tackle or couldn't get the ball off the opponent there, or you impeded my ability to do so. But again, I think rugby and rugby league both find themselves in these tricky spots. League less so than rugby, where they have a law and they follow it black and white, but they follow it so much so by the letter of the law that they don't sit there and go, well, actually, what's the common sense decision here? And I think they could have just sat around the table and said, okay, let's be honest with ourselves. Did Jahrome Hughes actually go out of his way to hurt the referee?
No, he's not manhandling the referee.
Is he abusing him? Is he having a crack at him? No, he's trying to get him out of the way or get around him to make a defensive play. And he hasn't exactly, from what I gathered, what I saw, he didn't go to the ref afterwards and have a crack at him and have a go. He just continued with the game. So I think there's enough evidence here, enough puzzle pieces to go, it's not foul play, it's nothing bad, it's not detrimental to the game, it's not a bad look for the game. Let's just say to him, hey, we'll make sure the referees are more careful with where they position themselves.
Yeah.
Make sure you're more careful with what you do. But for the time being, that's all.
I think the point you raised also about, I'd love to know what the ref actually thinks about
what does
this.
The ref think? What does Chris Butler think?
Is Owen Franks 2 weeks fair?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was a really dumb thing to do. It was really unusual. We were talking about this with Justin yesterday. He's just not that guy. He's got an impeccable track record. There was provocation there. You saw Duplessis Khalifi say something to him. But again, he's experienced enough Owen Franks. He's played over 100 tests, he knows.
Yeah,
and he lost his rag there.
What he's been suspended for is the clean out in the ruck, right?
Yeah, it's a shoulder.
Which was very similar to what Brendan Okora did to Viliama Kiko, actually, in the Bulldogs Sharks game. So... it was weird.
Yeah,
maybe he was just because Owen Franks hasn't lost much in his career.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just not used to being 0-4 and didn't like the feeling of it. I don't know.
Yeah, go out shoplifting today, Owen. You'll be actually forgiven for that.
Yeah, you'll get away with it.
Yeah, motorbike hit you and you haven't lost before.
Blame it on cis white men.
Childhood trauma. AFL, how's this? The Tasmanian Devils, they're going to get 100,000 foundation members before they start in 4 years' time at $10 a pop. That's $10 million by my calculations, isn't it? Or is that $1 million? 100,000 by 10. That's $1 million, isn't it? Yeah. So they're going to start off with at least that cash in the bank. But what does this tell you about Australian sport? It tells me that the AFL are the kings of Australia alongside cricket, plus also because it's Tasmania, obviously they're crying out for one of these teams, and everyone in Tassie, I don't know what the population of Tassie is, I'll just look it up actually, everyone in Tassie will be a bona fide supporter of the side.
Yeah.
But my point being that why hasn't Auckland FC done something similar? 541,000 as of September 2. Okay, so probably about almost 600,000 live in Tassie, okay? So at the moment, they've got 1 in 10. They'll get 3 or 4 in 10.
Oh, they will. There's a couple of things to it. One, AFL is a massive sport in Australia. It's I think overall, in terms of the entire country, it'd be neck and neck with Australia, but at least in...
With cricket?
In terms of winter sports.
It's the number one winter sport.
Well, yeah, but across the entirety of the country. Anyway,
it's played everywhere, mate.
I know it is played everywhere, but I mean in terms of TV numbers, in terms of participation at professional and lower levels and whatnot. Yeah, it probably is bigger than rugby league, to be fair, actually, and particularly in Tasmania, because that feeds off of Victoria. Now, just quickly, Australian supporters love being members of their teams. Like, I don't know if you've got many members of Super Rugby teams in New Zealand.
I doubt
There's
it.
a lot of Warriors members, to be fair, but it seems to be very much an Australian
Phoenix
thing.
have probably got a few.
Last year, every AFL club, apart from 3, had record membership numbers. The most was Collingwood, who had 106,470. And there's West Coast, who play in Perth, on the outskirts of Perth. I think it's in Perth. They had 103,000. The club with the fewest number were Gold Coast, with 23,000. So they get a lot of... I mean, the NRL, I think there's only 3 clubs that get upwards of 20,000 a year, which is the Broncos, the Roosters...
The numbers are impressive. Whichever way you look at it, the numbers are impressive.
It's incredible. But the fans in Australia... It must be a benefit thing, but the AFL fans... They are members of their clubs. They sign up and become members. Why wouldn't you do this if you're Auckland FC? Why wouldn't that be the first thing you do? Exactly. Go around town.
$10 membership and you get a ticket to one of the games.
You get all these bits of merchandise. You get these discounts.
Why wouldn't you be doing that?
I don't know if maybe there's a fast food chain or a restaurant that has a partnership with the Auckland FC. You get a discount there. You know, all these little things to get people involved.
Yeah, they've got a PR agency who's handling all of that for Auckland FC. A PR agency doing PowerPoint presentations, and they connect. They're fans-centric. Which this Auckland FC supporters group, it just looks murkier and murkier, doesn't it? Now, there was suggestions in some of the articles that I've read that this anonymous Twitter site said, one of the owners gave us a jersey. So, of course, the mainstream media, as they do 2 + 2, it's got to be Ali Williams or it's got to be his partner, Anna Mowbray. No, it doesn't. I know Ali Williams well enough to know that he hasn't got a box of these jerseys at home. And he's actually a really savvy dude. I can't believe that. I'm leaning more towards the PR agency. And I'm not accusing them of anything here, but how the hell did that guy get his hands on a jersey? And why haven't Auckland FC acknowledged this group? It's not an official supporters group. There's a hell of a lot of questions about this that need answering, don't they? Yeah, there is. Who is the guy that invaded? Because Lachlan, he's copping a $5,000 fine and a 2-year ban. Now, if he's doing this, somebody's paying that fine for him. He's not going to just go, give me a jersey and I'm going to cop a $5,000 fine, is he? It's a very heavy penalty. Well, the $5,000 actually is, I think that's the Australian fine. Here in New Zealand, of course, he's suffered childhood trauma. He got run over by a motorbike. He's been shoplifting. He's got a family group conference. There you go. Okay, but at the same time, a 2-year ban from Eden Park. Why would you cop any of this unless you're compensated for it? The dots aren't connected. Maybe he didn't know what the penalty was. Oh, come on, everyone knows he's an adult, mate. Well, I didn't know you got trespassed for 2 years. I don't think it's a.
You think it's a bigger story than I do. I mean, I just don't really care.
I just want to know the honest answers to it. That's all.
I don't care.
Yeah, I do.
I'm really not bothered.
I want to know who put him up to it because I just think that's a really good story.
If it involved a rugby team or New Zealand, yeah, that's a good story. I agree with that. If it involved a rugby team or New Zealand rugby or involved the Warriors, I'd care a bit more. But the A-League is a sport that, this is where I fall into the same camp as you, where I think it was not so much an inside job, but someone was absolutely put up to it. It's a sport that just doesn't get any traction in New Zealand. I don't know. I just don't care. I really don't
for the All Whites. Does that even concern you at all?
I don't know if I care, to be honest.
Really, a couple of friendlies. They're playing Egypt, and then they're either playing Croatia or Tunisia.
I've lost a little bit of passion for this team for two things that have happened over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
Danny Hay leaving.
That's one, and the other one.
The other one was the
coming off the pitch against Qatar.
Yeah.
Well, I feel the same way, mate. I love the All Whites, but I'm a bit sour of both. Just on Chris Wood. He's already scored 9 Premier League goals this year.
Really?
He's
got a hat-trick.
He's almost in double figures.
He's one of 6 guys who got a hat-trick
He's
this year.
almost in double figures again. He scored 65 Premier League goals. I know he probably won't get to 100, but how goddamn good would it be if he did? He's going to have to play for another 4 or 5 years if that's the case. Finally, Forest, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes as well. We'll talk about with Watto. A 4-point deduction. Every single fan of every other club in the Premier League is asking what? So when's your turn, Man City?
Yeah,
that's right.
Man City.
Okay. And the Premier League have said they've got a date for the hearing, but they won't say when.
They won't tell us. Yeah.
No.
Why not?
Why the lack? Again, as soon as you aren't transparent about it, then all of a sudden people get suspicious and start asking questions, don't they? You've dealt with Everton and Forest really publicly. Why won't you deal with Man City publicly?
Look, it is a situation.
We all know why. We all know why, don't we?
There's one thing that I really like. I think Sky Sports UK, I think it's them who do this. They involve a lot of fans with segments, and there's one they do where they have a fan from most of the clubs just sitting there in a big room on couches talking. And all of the fans, all but maybe a couple of them, are having a real crack at a Man City fan about the 115 charges. And he's sitting there and he's not really defending. He's not saying, no, they didn't do it. He's just saying, innocent until proven guilty. You guys don't know any information.
They were guilty last time, mate.
That's the thing. They were found guilty.
They were found guilty last time. That's the bloody thing.
Devlin.
Oh my goodness me!
The platform.
ATM, the Apologise to Me podcast. Mark Watson, broadcaster of much international acclaim. The Crusaders are 0-4. Should we all be celebrating this? I say hell yes, because this team is like the Aussie cricketers, mate. Keep them down as long as you can because you know they're bouncing back.
Yeah, I heard the comments from Justin yesterday that you don't want to be that team that finishes first and second and suddenly the Crusaders finish 7th or 8th and you find you're playing them in a playoff and they've suddenly found their mojo and they've come right. I'm not convinced they will come right. I just think they've lost too many marquee players. I'm not a big believer in Rob Penny. I mean, he's lost, it's now 7 consecutive games for him at a Super Rugby level that he's lost, if you include the last 3 games with the Waratahs as well. Where we should be concerned is when it comes to All Black time in regards to the fact that the Crusaders no longer possibly are providing New Zealand the depth that we've relied on so heavily. I did a show myself with Justin on Sunday and we had a really interesting text that came in saying that, part of the problem is that Scott Robertson didn't build any sort of succession planning. And Justin actually came up with a really good point and said, well, look, that's not the case. The problem is that he brought a lot of young guys through, but they came up to speed so quickly that they suddenly were bolstered and, put into All Black contention pretty quickly. And then post that, there've been, big demand for them. Lester Whanganuku, a really good example of a young guy who, did incredibly well in a short period of time, made the All Blacks, now is taking a big contract in France. But look, it is a concern. I mean, you look at the Blues type 5, they're just still woeful. You look at the Highlanders, the Hurricanes are holding the fort at the moment along with the Chiefs. Are the All Blacks now relying on 2 Super Rugby teams to become a powerhouse again? So look at a Super Rugby level, as a Blues fan, I don't really give a damn about the Crusaders. At a bigger picture level, I think we should all be concerned. But look, I think people should be asking the questions of Rob Penny. For so long, the Crusaders have been very insular. You need to be a Cantabrian, you need to be a Crusader to pretty much take over this team. But like the All Blacks, you need to be a New Zealander, and it's worked. You've had Hansen, you've had Deans, you've had, well, not so much with Todd Blackadder, but you have to understand this mentality. And I just wonder whether that's now coming back to bite them. Was Rob Penny genuinely the best candidate, or was he the best candidate because of his association with the region, being a good Canterbury man, being a good Crusaders man? And has that come back to bite them?
The Warriors, we've got to retain the ability to look honestly and critically at this team. And I fear, I don't know why, I just get a feeling that might be slipping away now. If you say that, they choked that game, they bottled that game, they lost that game, a game they should have won, already there are those making excuses, and you're getting a lot of social media for, you don't know what you're talking about, they didn't. Mate, any other game, any other team, any other sport, you would say, hey, hang on a second, you got 3 minutes to go, you're up 8 points, you lost it, you blew it. You would, wouldn't you? I hope that we are still allowed, amongst all the euphoria around this side, to be able to talk about this team without getting the backlash, because this does happen in New Zealand sport, that all of a sudden they're a sacred cow, and I don't want them to be.
No, we've got to continue to put the pressure on them. We've got to continue to ask the hard questions. And therefore that does put a level of accountability. Look, I'll say this, at this level, there's only one currency, and that's winning. The alternative is losing. Feel good's great. Now, it's interesting because of their own terrible history in regards to performance in the NRL, that almost artificially created such a buzz last year, because finally they did do well. So their own failings actually led to this incredible fandom, because they suddenly weren't disappointing. And so I think there's probably a little bit of a leeway at the moment based on the results, based on the performance the team did last year. There's probably a little bit of a get out of jail maybe through the first three games. They're away to Canberra this weekend. They could very well start the season 0-3.
It's in Christchurch though, that game, so it's kind of an away game, but it's kind of a home game. Yeah.
But you still got to come up against Canberra 0-3, isn't it? So like I say, I'll be honest, I'm still not convinced Shaun Johnson. I think Shaun Johnson had a stunning season last year, but man, he's been pretty damn ordinary for the decade prior to that, and I still wonder whether he can back up last season, this season. Clearly had a very, very good second half for the Warriors. But I'm with you. I mean, I don't think anybody should be a sacred cow. I mean, at the end of the day, as I said, it's about winning. It's about results. We've got to ask the hard questions, and no one should be humiliated or challenged by asking the hard questions too. And it's not a simple case of, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, I always say that to people. Well, why do you vote for a government? Why do you vote in the election? You've never been a member of parliament. You don't know what you're talking about. I mean, it's a ridiculous argument. But I think, look, as long as it's asking the questions in the right way, in the right manner, should we write them off just yet? No, we shouldn't. But I mean,
they need to win this game. They got to win this game this weekend.
They need to win this one. They need to show they can win, and they need to get back on the horse, and they need to start winning. Because we always talk about the importance of the end of the season, but why is the start of the season so different than the end of the season? I mean, you score a try in the first 2 minutes of a test match, and it's considered a great moment. A team scores a try in the last 2 minutes of a test match, and it's like, but they scored towards the end. I've never understood that mentality.
Finally, and just quickly, it ended with a damp kind of squib. The Hurricanes Power didn't do a haka this week against the Blues. Their management won't say why not. If you ask New Zealand Rugby, they say you got to go back to the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes say, we don't know. Their captain says, got no idea when we decided not to do it. Well, you're the captain. You're directly involved. And everyone just seems to be ducking for cover. It's bizarre, isn't it? Why? I mean, I was hoping that they would triple down and that they would start insulting everyone and anyone that had ever worn a nappy in their lives, and that, but somebody's got to them somewhere. Somebody said to them, stop doing this. That's what this says to me, because they were so defiant after the first 2 weeks of doing this. I can't believe that they've made a collective decision. It's better now that we don't do it.
Well, look, all these players believe in their rhetoric, and a lot of it's ignorance, until someone then says, by the way, it'll probably mean you will never get paid as a professional rugby player. You'll never end up getting a per diem. And then they suddenly go, I believe in it, but I don't believe in it that much. I'd rather have the money. But also, I think it's just, again, a demonstration of just the lack of leadership that runs right across New Zealand rugby. Why people are not turning up, why there's no engagement. No one can give you an honest answer. Just simply turn up and go, look, we admire the players. They thought they were doing the best thing. They didn't understand it in its entirety. They didn't understand the complexities, the commercial ramifications that might come from this. We've sort of sat down, taken them through the whole plan. We've reminded them that they represent the entire region and that some of this stuff is not going to be that well received by certain people. and everybody, for the greater good of it's come to a common sense that, hey, maybe it's not the best thing to
difficult
do.
would
I don't
that
know
have
how
been to do?
difficult.
How difficult was that for somebody to just come out and say that? And that's a really nice way to wrap it up, Mark. I mean, for God's sake, mate, you can come up with that in 30 seconds. How difficult is that?
Oh, look, absolutely, Martin, and this is just what we're lacking. But there is just such a fear there, isn't it, against this?
This is the way Mark Robinson runs his organisation, mate. He ducks for cover. He's an ostrich. Anything that might involve him actually making a decision or showing some leadership, he just runs. I'm over here. I'm hiding. To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. Nottingham Forest docked 4 points by the Premier League. Everton docked 10, reduced to 6. So all eyes now on Manchester City, facing over 100 separate and what are called serious financial fair play regulation breaches. How is this all going to unfold from here? And is it fair on Nottingham Forest? Andy Buckley, BBC, Talk Sport. He joins us to discuss. Couple of aspects to this then. Is that fair? Are they going to appeal this? And of course, the flow on to Man City, because all eyes now on those 115 charges.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, people moaning quite rightly as well today, saying, well, hang on a minute, what about Manchester City? And there's talk that it's going to be the autumn of this year when their fate will be decided. But a complete and utter carnage, really, chaos to the end of the season. It could be that after the last games of the season on May the 19th, it won't be resolved in terms of who goes down until in a court of law, really, and it's all decided who stays up and who doesn't. But yeah, Forest 4-point deduction, 3 points for an entry point for a significant breach, according to the technical jargon. Then the amount of the breach was a further 3 points, that's 6 points, and then they get deducted 2 points for mitigation, the fact that they cooperated with the commission. So Forest have come out with a really strongly worded statement tonight. They've gone for it, the Premier League, with both barrels, saying that they feel as though they've been harshly treated. It's harmed the trust and confidence we had in the Premier League, according to Nottingham Forest. We were extremely dismayed by the tone and content of the Premier League submissions before the Commission. And it said it could lead to the stagnation of our national game. In other words, they speculated to accumulate when they came up from the Championship. It backfired, of course, because they spent, an awful lot of money on 45 players, £47.5 million they spent. Sorry, that was the fee for Brennan Johnson to Tottenham in mitigation as they tried to mitigate the losses. And it took place just after the closure of the transfer window. So that was part of the mitigation for Nottingham Forest. But yeah, all sorts of confusion, really. No consistency as well. I suppose that's one of the chief complaints of the football fan tonight, whether you support Nottingham Forest or Everton. It's where's the consistency, because these rules just it's just so hard to comprehend what's going on, and it's just not fair on the average football fan. Yes, Forest have been reckless, they're probably guilty to a certain extent, but are the rules right? That's the big question.
Andy, look, I mean, I sit here with my head in my hands and think, what, has World Rugby or has Super Rugby taken over the Premier League? Because this is just nonsense, that the appeals process should conclude, and this is their rules, no later than, and if possible, sometime before 24th of May, 5 days after the season finishes. To just even think for a second that you're going to have the final whistle blown on the final day, and that table, who's relegated, who wins the title, it actually may not be real, and that might take months before it gets rejigged, and then teams that aren't. I mean, you just imagine, how does this affect those that are playing off in the playoffs as well, and as far as the championship goes? It's just nonsense, mate, that they even contemplate the idea that they're going to go to the courts after the last ball's kicked.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you entirely. Everybody does, really, apart from those in authority. I mean, you're right. It could be concluded after the final games of the season. In terms of the actual regulations, the 23-24 season remains, in quotes, live, unquote, until the annual general meeting in June, when the relegated clubs transfer their certificates. So it's all active till then. But they have set this deadline, the backstop date, for the whole thing to be concluded by the 24th of May. But, I mean, football fans could turn around and say, well, let's vote with our feet. Let's not go and watch our team. They won't do it, of course, because they stand by them loyally. But let's just not bother. And then that would just show a complete and utter opposition, really, an obvious sign in terms of the opposition and the strength of feeling towards the Premier League. Let's not bother turning up, because you're quite right. Nottingham Forest playing Burnley Turf Moor in the last game of the season on May the 19th. And what if Forest fans said, I tell you what, we're not going to go. Let's just forget the whole thing. Let's not turn up. And that really would have been a statement of intent, just to say, we think the whole thing is a farce. Because all this jeopardy of going into the last game of the season, as you say, it could get overridden in a court within the few days after that. So it just makes a mockery of the whole game, really. And they've been punished because the rules were different for them, because they came up from the second tier of English football, so they couldn't afford to make the same amount of losses. And then they do the best. Some would say that they overstepped the mark. They completely spent far too much money, but now we're in this complete and utter mess with weeks to go to the end of the season.
Favourite game, Lachlan?
We need
What's it
to
called?
talk.
What's more chance of happening?
Next!
I present two scenarios. You tell me what is more chance of happening. The Crusaders make the semi-finals of Super Rugby, or the White Ferns demolish this target, 48 runs and 17 balls, and win the first T20 versus England.
No,
what is more chance of happening?
Crusaders make the semi-finals.
There is a chance, Lachlan, that they do make the semi-finals.
Yeah.
Last year, the Chiefs were, 14-1, or was it 13-1? 14-1. I think you play 15 games, don't you?
You play 13, 12-1.
No, hang on. Do that again. Okay?
Oh, you might play 14, 13-1.
13-1? No.
I don't know.
Yeah, hang on. Super Rugby table. Just let me look that up, eh? 'Cause, hang on.
Well, that won't tell you. That'll just tell you what the table looks like now.
No, Super Rugby table, 2023.
Last year they played 14.
Games. Okay, that's they played 14.
Yeah.
So there's 10 games left. Now, for the Crusaders to make the top four, they're going to have to win all 10. Okay, so let's...
Well, they could win it. They could win a quarterfinal on the road. Certainly.
But they won't finish top... Well, okay, because they finish top four then if you make the semi-finals. I'm talking on the points. So, okay, well, let's actually readjust then. This particular game. What is more chance happening? The Crusaders make the semi-finals, or the Raiders beat the Warriors Friday night.
Crusaders make semi-finals, or Raiders beat the Warriors.
So the Crusaders would have to finish
Raiders beat the
top
Warriors
8.
because there's a lot of boxes the Crusaders need to tick to make that happen. All the Raiders need to do is turn up and have the hell of a performance on Friday night. That's just one game. The Crusaders need to win probably 10 in a row.
To make the top 8 last year in Super Rugby, you only needed to win 5 games and lose 9.
Now, who's 8th at the moment?
MP.
And they're 2-2, right?
2-2.
Well, if the season keeps going the way it is, you've got to be 7-7 probably.
Okay, to make...
to be fair, that won't last, though.
To make 6th spot last year, Waratahs was 6-8.
Yeah.
So what Justin was saying yesterday, that if the Crusaders finish 7th or 8th, they then play either the first or second finishing teams, right? And no one wants to play the Crusaders in that because, A, you should be...
Especially if you're a New Zealand team.
Well, and you should be dicking them because they finished 7th or 8th. So what is more chance of happening?
Next!
The Crusaders finish with a record above 500.
So all they need to do...
They would have to win 8
They need
and
to
lose
be above
2.
500. Yeah,
they'd have to go 8 and 2. Or even if they... Okay, let's make it that the Crusaders finish 500 at least, okay? So they win...
7-3.
7 and 3 from here on in. Or the Hurricanes win it all. What is more chance of happening?
Crusaders go 7-3.
Same. You see, I think that as well.
Well, because how many titles have the Hurricanes won?
One.
With all due respect.
One.
How many finals have they been to?
Good
3.
God. 3,
06,
4?
15, 16.
Is that it? We've made the semi-finals hell of a few. Okay.
Semi-finals many times, but the final only 3 times.
All right. Why are we saying this about the Crusaders? Are we saying this because we genuinely believe that they're going to come back, or are we just, over so many years, so used to the fact that they do?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but also I think anyone with a brain will look at the fact that they're down to their 4th string first 5. They have so many injuries right now that you threw the stat out earlier, which I think Jeff Parks brought up, that only one of their starting 15 players from the final last year where they beat the Chiefs, played last weekend against the Canes.
And that says everything. That says everything. What is more chance of happening then? The Crusaders finish with a record of at least 7-7 or better. So they've got a 500 record or better, or the Warriors make the 8. What is more chance of happening? Oh, come on, that's an easy one. The Warriors, mate. Yeah, come on, okay, that's a gimme. The Warriors. We'll say it with some belief in your voice, okay? The Warriors.
It's hard. It's going to be hard.
The Warriors are making the 8.
It's going to be hard. That's my point.
There is no way in hell they're not making the 8. They're too good a side.
What's the record right now?
Almost and very nearly. Okay?
They're 0-2. The Warriors did. Look, the Broncos went 13-11, which every single year pretty much gets you into the finals. 12-12 on a good year get into the finals. 2 years ago, Broncos were 13-11, didn't get them in the finals. The previous year to that, the Titans were 10-14, 3 games worse, and got into the finals.
Okay, but I mean, you are going to have to win. I'd say
you've got to be 14. I think if you want to guarantee that spot, you've got to be 14 and 10.
What is more chance of happening?
13-11, yeah, maybe.
The Crusaders finish at least 7-7, at least 500, right? At least the 500. Or Manly make the top 4. From what you said.
Manly make the top 4.
Do you think that's a given now?
No, it's not a given, no. Because look, we're only 2 games into the comp.
To make the top 4, you're going to have to win 16 games, 15 or 16 games.
Yeah, it depends how what the rest of the comp's up to. But yeah, like off the top of my head, I think the lowest ranked team to make the top 4 is 16 wins over the last sort of 10 years.
Warriors were 16 last year.
Yeah. There was a year where the Warriors were third or fourth, and they only had 13 wins. That was 2007.
Well, this competition this year, it looks to me like one of those years where everything is going to be crunched up a hell of a lot. There'll be 1 or 2 at the bottom, but I think that it'll be a bit like the English League Championship, the second division in England behind the Premier League, where there's only 8 or 9 points between the team that gets relegated and the team that finishes 6th and goes to the playoffs. It feels like that kind of a season, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But I do think 2 or 3, because we've seen this happen the last few years, 2 or 3, even 4 sometimes, will separate themselves from the rest of the pack.
Always.
At some point. Maybe probably at the end of the year. And
Manly top 4. More chance of happening.
Well, who's missing out on the top 4 then? Warriors, Storm, Broncos, Panthers.
Well, I'd say Storm,
Cowboys.
I'd say Storm, Broncos and Panthers are probably dead set certs, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not sure about my team.
Oh, hang on a second. It was only a couple of weeks ago that you were already winning it again, weren't you? Sorry.
Oh, I never said
Sorry,
that.
You know I never said that. And you were going to go unbeaten throughout the season,
say that. I'll say this. I'm pretty damn good when it comes to my Broncos. I don't overhype us.
Good Lord.
I don't.
I mean, that's like saying the White Ferns are going to score, a 6 off every ball and win this match. What is more chance of happening? That the White Ferns hit 38 off 7 and win this particular T20, or the athletes at the Olympic Village use all 300,000 condoms and ask for a resupply. What is more chance of happening?
Probably the first one.
See, I would disagree with that, because when I was at the Olympics, they ran the story every single year. I've covered a couple of Olympics, and every year they had to hand out more. So they're handing out 33 condoms per athlete for this particular version of it in Paris.
How many athletes are going?
City of Love, 10,000. No, 9,000.
9,000 athletes. 33 each.
Okay, but that's
You're
also,
there for 2 weeks.
That's athletes having sex with athletes, so that's 66 each, effectively, isn't it? Because your partner's got 33 as well. Partners. Zoos.
Well, what if you're like a happily married man or woman going over there? Are you using all 33 of yours? If your wife or your husband can't go with you?
Define happily married.
Okay, you're married and you're faithful.
That don't mean you're happy. See, that's the whole point.
No, but you're faithful. The point is you're not having sex with anyone else when you're there.
Well, hand your 33 to your cellmate Lachlan then in that case. Because he's single. He's going out every night after his event finishes.
He'll need all 66 of those, He'll fill those up.
What is more chance of happening? The White Ferns win this one day, needing 37 now off 5 balls. So that means they need 7.
37 off 5. That's impossible. They can't do it.
Yes, they can. A whole lot of wides.
Okay, fine.
So what is more chance happening? That or
35 off 4 now.
35. Okay, well, let's go back to the Crusaders. The Crusaders finish at least 7-7, the 500, which means they'd have to have a 7-3 record from here. Or MP, Moana Pacifica, make the 8.
Oh, yeah, Moana Pacifica make the 8. They've won 2 games. Mm. One was a game on the road against
the Force,
and one was more on the road for them than the other team. Is that fair to say? When they beat the Injuru in Melbourne?
Yep.
I think, is that, well, both on the road. But both road games that they won. They lost to the Highlanders in a pretty close game, to be fair, in the opening round of the season.
Yes,
it was quite a competitive game. And the other loss was against who?
It was Auckland, wasn't it? Was it the Blues?
No, Blues beat the Drua round 1.
Waratahs. No, they beat the Waratahs. They beat the Waratahs 33-24.
No, they didn't.
No, that was last year. Sorry, I'm looking at last year. Okay, let me just change that for a second. Here we go.
Useless.
I know, just give me a break, mate.
Okay, they beat the Force. The week prior to that, they...
they beat the Drua 39-36.
Lost to the Rebels.
Yeah, 39-36. So they lost
beat
to
the Drua.
So they're going to have to win 5 or 6 games to make the 8. What is more chance of happening? That or the Crusaders go 7-7?
Why not make the top 8? I said that.
No, the Crusaders, mate, are going to win 7 games, Lachlan.
Okay, Moana Pacifica sit 8th.
Yeah.
They're 2-2.
Yeah.
They've had 4 challenging-ish games. All right, who have they got coming up? Let's have a look at their schedule. MP next have the Brumbies away. Well, that's a loss.
That's a loss.
Blues at home, that's a loss.
That's a loss.
Chiefs,
that's a
loss. Reds,
probably a loss.
At home,
probably a loss.
Probably a loss. And Drua away, Lautoka.
Yeah, tough game.
Where's Churchill Park? I think that's Lautoka. Yeah.
And then the Highlanders at home. No.
Okay.
I think
I'm going to zag. Sorry, I'm going to say Crusaders 7-7.
LBP, let's be positive. Matt Gunn from Twizel joins us every Tuesday just to run through what's happened on the weekend, in particular his sporting sides. Liverpool lost, the Highlanders lost, the Doggies lost, the Warriors lost. But then the Maadi Cup's in town. What's not to celebrate, Matt? Let's start with 0-2. And the stat that says from that position, only one team has made the grand final in the last 12 or 13 seasons, and that was the Cowboys in 15. So our Doggies, mate, tell me...
Well, hang on. So it's possible.
Oh, okay. Well, let's be positive. Let's be positive.
What you're saying to me is there have been teams to go further from being 2-0 at the start of the competition.
Good call.
Now, I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that the Dogs are one of those teams. All right? Can we start there?
Well, okay, you aren't one of those teams because you've shown nothing in the first 2 rounds at all to suggest that you are going to be able to resurrect yet another season. At this stage, after 2 games, are you resigning yourself to the fact that it's almost over already?
Well, it feels like it might be, Martin, but there is always a glimmer of hope. But I can tell you what, the only thing that I can say about watching the Bulldogs get beaten, again for the second time in 2 weeks this year, is that it was a beating from the start. There was never a moment where I thought, we're in it, we're coming back, we're taking it. On the other hand, though, the devastating finale of the Melbourne Warriors game is the kind of thing that I just can't stand for. At least I know we're hopeless. The Warriors, 8 points up, come back from oblivion, look like they've got the game, 3 minutes to go. And they let 2 tries in, and two of the best tries we've seen this year. Just horrifying for Warriors fans, and the only glimmer of hope I got from the weekend is it wasn't as bad supporting the Bulldogs as it was supporting the Warriors.
The only thing we can celebrate, well, I mean Hurricanes at the top of the table, but we can collectively celebrate the demise of the Crusaders. And don't give me this sympathy trip about, the injury, and no, and woe is that. Mate, they've been dicking us for 7 or 8 years on the trot, mate.
Well,
I'm loving this. You got to love it, don't you?
Anyone not enjoying this doesn't understand what sport's about. We don't have to support all the Kiwi teams.
No.
This Crusaders, they deserve a little bit of a stint at the bottom.
They do.
At the moment, they're only just a point ahead of the Western Force, who are an absolute disaster. You asked me what I thought of the Australian team so far. The Reds have been an absolute victory so far this year. They look good. The Brumbies actually do look pretty good. And I've watched a couple of the Waratahs games. They've been unlucky on more than one occasion. I would expect that by the time we wrap up this top 8, Moana Pacifica will be out of there, and the Waratahs will sneak their way up into there. I think your top 8's almost decided now.
Yeah, hang on a second.
Western Force.
No, the Crusaders will make it. They will scratch out enough wins, mate. And as Justin said to us yesterday, who wants them finishing 7th or 8th? So you're the top seed in a quarterfinal, and you get them. No one wants that game, and that is the mind trip that they still hold on every team.
Yeah, so you've fallen for the trap,
Justin.
Listen, I am saying in my positive tone that I try and bring every week, for the rest of the country, the Crusaders will not climb to 8th or above. Now, this should be viewed not as something to have me cancelled over, but as something to say, the power has moved.
Go on.
And it's not in Christchurch anymore.
Mate. Go on.
All right. Rob Penny looks like he's ready to take the axe to somebody's legs. Don't tell me he's not thinking the same way I am. What have I taken over here? I got nothing more to say, Martin.
Maadi Cup, then let's kick it with that. We spoke to Watto about that as well. Just an enormous and awesome event, isn't it? So weather conditions for a start. How many kids are down there? What are you expecting?
Yeah, there's record numbers of kids in this regatta. There's 2,200 individual rowers, and that fills up something like 2,800 seats in boats over the week. Sunday was a parade, Martin, with 104 schools evenly split between the North and the South Island. And they had their poetry kind of welcoming. They marched around the streets. This is the first time in more than 5 years that a rowing regatta of this scale has happened without social distancing measures. So the kids have been separated lakeside over the last 5 years at these regattas. There's been no social aspect. You could only interact with the people in your own team and the people in your own coaching staff. And there've even been regattas with no spectators. So this has opened it back up. And you can imagine 2,200 teenagers all together and being able to interact and have fun with each other again. It's not just the competition on the water, I think, that makes the Maadi Cup such a special regatta for all those in the rowing fraternity. It's the bringing together. It's the biggest regatta in the country.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do, though, is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
You better believe it!
The Platform.